D-Day succeeded because of 2,000 DUKWs that never fired a shot. Iwo Jima required 68 different amphibious vehicle types. The Eastern Front saw Soviet tanks driving across river bottoms. World War II wasn't won on land or sea, it was won in the 50 yards between them. This is every amphibious vehicle that actually fought. Landing Vehicle Tracked LVT series. The Landing Vehicle Tracked, commonly called the Amtrac, emerged from the U.S. Marine Corps' recognition that conventional landing craft could not cross coral reefs or soft beaches. Developed in the late interwar period, it was designed to move directly from ship to shore without requiring ports or prepared landing zones. In combat, LVTs proved decisive in the Pacific, where reef-strewn coastlines and heavy surf made traditional landings impossible. They transported infantry, artillery, and supplies across water and inland through mud and sand, maintaining momentum during amphibious assaults. Their existence reflected the shift toward integrated sea-land operations against fortified island defenses. DUKW Amphibious Truck. The DUKW was a wheeled amphibious truck designed to solve a different logistical problem, moving supplies efficiently from ship to shore and inland without transshipment. Built on a standard military truck chassis, it combined road mobility with marine capability. Used extensively in Europe and the Pacific, the DUTW supported landings by delivering ammunition, fuel, and food directly to advancing troops. Its value lay not in combat power, but in sustaining offensives beyond the beachhead, transforming amphibious warfare into a continuous logistical operation. Landing Vehicle Tracked British variants. Britain adopted American LVT designs through Lend-Lease, recognizing their utility in operations where tidal flats and soft terrain limited conventional landings. British modified variants were used primarily in northwest Europe. These vehicles enabled infantry to cross flooded terrain and coastal obstacles, particularly during operations in the Low Countries. Their use highlighted the British emphasis on adapting proven Allied technology rather than developing entirely new platforms under wartime pressure. Terrapin Amphibious Vehicle. The Terrapin was a British-designed amphibious transport developed to carry troops and equipment across rivers and inundated landscapes. Unlike tracked vehicles, it used twin hulls and wheels, prioritizing buoyancy and stability. Although less widely produced, the Terrapin played a role during river crossing operations in Europe. It demonstrated Britain's continued effort to overcome geographic obstacles through specialized engineering rather than brute force alone. Schwimmwagen. Germany's Schwimmwagen was a lightweight amphibious car intended for reconnaissance and liaison roles. It was not designed for assault landings, but for operational flexibility across rivers and marshes. In combat, the Schwimmwagen allowed German units to maintain mobility in Eastern Europe's waterlogged terrain. Its existence reflected German doctrine, which favored tactical mobility over large-scale amphibious assault capability. Land-Wasser-Schlepper. The Land-Wasser-Schlepper was a German tracked amphibious tractor designed to move heavy loads from ship to shore. Developed in response to logistical challenges, it served a role similar to Allied amphibious transports. Used primarily in limited operations and port environments, it never reached the scale or doctrinal importance of Allied equivalents. Its restricted impact underscored Germany's lack of strategic emphasis on amphibious warfare. Type 2 Kami amphibious tank. Japan developed true amphibious tanks to support island garrisons and landing forces. The Type 2 Kami was designed to be launched from ships and operate independently in coastal waters. In combat, it was used defensively rather than offensively, often in small numbers. Its limited success reflected Japan's industrial constraints and the strategic shift toward defensive warfare as Allied naval dominance grew. Type 3 Kachi amphibious tank. The Type 3 Kachi was a larger and more capable evolution of Japanese amphibious armor. It was intended to support reinforced landings and counterattacks against Allied beachheads. Production remained limited, and its battlefield impact was marginal. The vehicle nevertheless illustrated Japan's recognition that amphibious mobility was essential in island warfare, even if resources could not sustain large-scale deployment. T-37 and T-38 amphibious tanks. The Soviet Union entered the war with light amphibious tanks designed for reconnaissance and river crossings. The T-37 and T-38 were products of pre-war doctrine, emphasizing maneuver warfare across Europe's many waterways. In combat, these vehicles proved vulnerable to enemy fire and rough conditions. While their practical value declined as the war progressed, they represented early attempts to integrate amphibious capability into armored forces. GAZ-46 Amphibious Vehicle Late War. The GAZ-46 emerged late in the war and in its immediate aftermath, reflecting continued Soviet interest in amphibious mobility. Though limited in wartime deployment, it supported river crossings and reconnaissance tasks. Its development underscored the Red Army's experience fighting across vast river networks, where mobility often mattered more than armor or firepower. Landing craft vehicle personnel, tracked variants. Certain Allied landing craft incorporated tracked mobility to improve beach crossing capability. These hybrids bridged the gap between pure landing craft and armored vehicles. Their operational use reinforced the idea that amphibious warfare required layered solutions, not a single universal vehicle. Each design addressed a specific phase of the landing process. Armored amphibious support vehicles. Modified amphibious vehicles equipped with weapons provided limited fire support during landings. While not tanks in the conventional sense, they offered suppressive fire as troops disembarked. These vehicles demonstrated the gradual integration of combat power into amphibious transport, reducing reliance on naval gunfire alone. Duplex drive (DD) tanks. The duplex drive tank was an Allied attempt to give armored units immediate presence during amphibious landings. Developed by fitting standard tanks with collapsible flotation screens and propellers, it allowed armored vehicles to swim from landing craft to shore under their own power. In combat, DD tanks were used, most notably in Northwest Europe, where their success depended heavily on sea conditions and crew training. When deployed effectively, they provided early armored firepower that supported infantry during the most vulnerable phase of an assault. Their mixed results demonstrated both the promise and limits of adapting conventional armored vehicles to amphibious warfare, reinforcing the need for careful coordination between sea state, engineering, and doctrine. Ford GPA Amphibious Jeep. The Ford GPA was an amphibious adaptation of the standard military Jeep, developed to provide small units with the ability to cross rivers, lakes, and sheltered coastal waters without relying on bridges or boats. It was conceived to extend reconnaissance and command mobility in fluid operational environments. In combat, the GPA saw service with Allied forces in Europe and the Pacific, though its performance was mixed. While effective in calm inland waters and river crossings, it proved less capable in rough seas and under heavy load. Its operational use reflected an important wartime lesson. Amphibious capability at the light vehicle level could enhance flexibility, but only when matched carefully to terrain, weather, and mission demands. M29 Weasel. The M29 Weasel was a light-tracked vehicle developed to move troops and supplies across terrain that defeated conventional vehicles, including snow, mud, swamps, and shallow water. Though not designed as a seagoing assault vehicle, it possessed inherent amphibious capability that proved valuable in specific environments. In combat, the Weasel was used by Allied forces in Europe and the Pacific for reconnaissance, supply, transport, and infantry support in flooded lowlands and riverine terrain. Its low ground pressure allowed it to operate where wheeled vehicles bogged down, extending mobility during winter operations and amphibious crossings. The M29 illustrated how amphibious warfare was not limited to beaches alone, but also included inland environments where water and terrain shaped the battlefield as decisively as enemy fire. World War II amphibious vehicles were not symbols of technological excess, but instruments of necessity. They emerged from the realization that modern war demanded mobility across every terrain, including the unstable boundary between land and sea. Collectively, these vehicles transformed amphibious warfare from a risky improvisation into a repeatable operation. They enabled sustained offensives across oceans, rivers, and flooded plains, reshaping how armies planned and executed campaigns. Their legacy lies not in individual performance but in doctrinal change. By the war's end, amphibious mobility was no longer exceptional but expected, influencing post-war military planning across the globe. The vehicles of World War II proved that control of terrain extended beyond maps, reaching into water, mud, and surf, where victory often began before the first step touched solid ground.